I have to be upfront, I didn't read the other Mindy Kaling book, so I can't compare this one to the previous one, so, I just have to talk about this one in its own merits. It's a good read and worth some time. The format makes it possible to gloss over some areas that might not interest the reader. It's a strong book that starts off really slow, so much so, I almost put it down, but it continued to get stronger and made for an easy read overnight. It sounds like a horrible comparison, but the beauty tips and shtick were almost comparable to Miranda Singh's recent self-help book in Kaling's first essay. The introduction identifies the readers as either a woman or a gay man, or a gift for a gay man's gayer friend, which, based on the first essays, one would have to entirely agree. In not being familiar with Kaling's other writing, the strong self-depreciating humor in the introduction and then in the first essay is almost off-putting, but then, it finds its groove and throughout other essays becomes more and more empowering and insightful, or perhaps I became used to it. Throughout the essays are rounded out in strong way that resolves the initial self-doubt. Above all else, there are just these one-liners throughout that I found that I was laughing out loud, again and again. Some are subtle, some are not so subtle, but I really appreciated how intelligent that they were, comparing the political stability of NBC to various African countries, giving an exception to Botswana. For the record, Botswana actually has a high level of political stability. A reflection on McDonald's sending her gift cards for her birthday is also one of those humor bright spots. Kaling reflects on her time working on The Office, as well as the development of her own show, The Mindy Project. Kaling talks about fame, but does so in the context of learning certain behaviors and her own reflection on being gracious and happy for her opportunity. There is a fictitious email exchange between teachers, an alternative Kaling, that, as a teacher, was probably one of the funniest things I've ever read, and that alone made the book really worth it for me. One thing does stand out in the book, Kaling's own recognition and maturity surrounding relationships and seeking out a boyfriend. Following a failed relationship between a White House staffer, Kaling ends with the reality that some relationships just fizzle, just not necessarily working out and do not always have a bang to that ending. This insight is helpful because this reflection in one spot gives a bit more relief or thought into some of the more outlandish fixations on men towards the second half of the book. I'd recommend the book, once one gets past the initial stages of self-depreciating humor and outlandish recommendations for stardom in the first essay, it becomes much more fluid and amusing, finally rounding out with Kaling's own acknowledgement of "why not me?" which, Kaling does a good job throughout various chapters, marking her own appreciation and recognizing the opportunities and some of the exceptional she's been afforded. There's a combination of obvious wit, but, in paying attention there are some pretty deep-seated and insightful jokes, making it have a bit for a lot of audiences.